We're down in Plymouth today at Queen Anne's Battery to take a look at the new flagship of the Aquaspirit aluminium rib range, and it's a rib with some very major, very significant, very welcome differences. This is it. It's the new Aquaspirit 700. Now, Aquaspirit is a Ukrainian builder of aluminium ribs. So as you would expect, the first major difference consists in that aluminium construction. The hull is aluminium, the deck's aluminium, the console, the base for those seats, the T-top, the cleats, the rails, everything here is aluminium. And that's obviously light and it's strong and it's relatively eco-friendly too, because of course it can all be recycled at end of life. In fact, the only thing here that isn't built from aluminium is the screen, the cushions and the collar. That's about it. And talking of the collar, well, that of course is the other key difference here. If we just lean over and peek in, you'll see the amount of space we've got internally in that bow. And if we move further aft past the helm seats, in that cockpit. Now, one of the endemic problems for traditional ribs is the fact that the tube creates a bit of ingress in terms of that internal space, so it limits the amount you've got to play with. Well, not so here. If we move towards the back of the boat, you'll see that we actually have D-tubes here in common with the smaller Aquaspirit 585, and the principle here is to use a conventional 63 centimetre diameter tube but chop it in half. So you still get that buoyancy, but you get plenty more in the way of internal space. That's augmented by the fact that this enjoys a beam around about 9 foot 10 inches, which is 5, 6, 7 inches more than you would tend to expect from a traditional rib at this kind of length. And what that does for you is generate the extra space inside for proper swim platforms, for lovely rails and cleats, including midships cleats, so you can rig a spring should you like, more rails forward, and all anchored very firmly in these good sturdy aluminium plates. And that of course means that you're not causing an unnecessary wear and tear on the fabric of your collar. Now, that collar is built from Hypalon. They tell me that you can, if you really want to, save a few quid by speccing it with PVC instead, but I don't imagine that a lot of people will take them up on that option. But of course, the fact that this is built from aluminium means it comes in at less than 3 metric tons, which is why you can get away with a single engine rig as small as 200. We've got the 250 here for around about 43 knots. Apparently the 300 will deliver around about 45 to 47 knots, but you could still expect, I would think, the best part of 40 knots, even with the basic 200. But let's step straight on board and take a look at these internal spaces. And we'll start at the aft end with these swim platforms, because as I say, swim platforms of this scale are very rare on a traditional rib. Good size on both sides of that outboard. They're nice and deep too, so plenty of storage inside there, and a little step up so you can get over that low slung backrest into the cockpit itself very safely. We also have an arch above that Suzuki, a little towing arch for your water sports, and on the port side the fuel filler leading down to a 300 litre tank which comes as standard, and that's positioned fore and aft beneath this section of deck to keep the weight nice and central and low down, to improve your handling. And that butts up forward against the water tank, which is 60 litres, and that's positioned beneath that seating at the helm there. Also on the port side, we've got your transom shower just down there in that moulding. I'll say moulding, it's not a moulding at all, is it? Because it's built from aluminium. That's very neatly positioned. And if I climb over and pop the camera around the back here, you'll see that we also have a nice big telescopic ladder. So getting back onto this boat from the water is no problem at all, and that's certainly not something that a great many ribs at this kind of size could claim. If we look a little further forward, it's immediately clear that Aquaspirit has worked really hard to leverage every square inch of deck space on this new 700, and that of course all starts with this big aft bench and its forward projections, wraps around in a C shape with a central table and an aft facing bench, so you could easily seat up to 6 people here. Now, you could, if you chose, spec that bench instead as a little wet bar with a sink and a gas hob, but the capacity of this boat to seat 6 people back here and also to seat 4 people further forward is very welcome indeed on a boat of this type and of this size. And yes, it's certainly rated to carry 11 people, but it's certainly no stretch to imagine that on a day out, all 11 of those people would get a good place to sit without getting under one another's feet. And what I also like back here is the fact that this backrest, as you can see from these catches, folds down into this space to turn this aft bench into an aft sunbed. We've got a little cutout here so that even when it's rigged as a sunbed, you can still trim that engine out a little bit. But if I climb over into the cockpit itself and lift the hatch above this aft bench, you'll see, well, first up, we've got some really good storage, very nicely finished, with good access to our fuses and our wiring behind that little door. But we also have these. Now, these little cushions, if I show you them end on, you'll see they're triangular. And the reason for that is that when you fold this backrest down, there's a little gap which can be filled with these just to keep you nice and comfortable. And if you want to extend this sunbed, turn the entire back end into one continuous sunbed, you can do that, not by means of this table. What we actually do with this telescopic leg is drop the table below the level of these cushions, and then we use rigid cushions to fill this space, this entire space here. What I also like back here though is the generosity of the storage. As I say, we've got good storage beneath that wraparound C-shaped bench. We've also got good storage behind this backrest here, and if I lift this hatch beneath us, good storage inside the seat base as well. Really generous size, and all of it lined with these little rubberized strips just to minimize impacts, minimize noise when you're underway in the chop, and to keep them a little bit more watertight. And if I come down to deck level, you'll see that each of these units, well, they're not individual pods secured down to the deck. They're aluminium units welded down into the deck structure. So the rigidity here is fantastic. This is SeaDek, incidentally. They don't do a natural teak alternative to this, but you wouldn't really want them to. This is very attractive, feels great underfoot, it's very easy to look after. And you'll see a lot of this stuff inside some of the storage spaces as well, just to minimise noise again, minimise reverberation. And as for the furniture itself, well, it certainly is very generous, but it's also relatively low slung. Quite low profile. We've got a relatively elevated deck, so when you sit here, this is the kind of boat where you feel like you're very much sitting on top of it rather than inside it. So it doesn't feel especially secure in that regard, but it's certainly helped by the fact that we've got these lovely solid rails built into these nice rigid gunnels. And the fact that this furniture is so low slung certainly helps ease your access over that aft backrest onto those swim platforms. But let's spin around now and head a little further forward. As we do so, you'll notice we've got the optional slide out fridge in the base for those twin Helm seats. We've also got the struts here for the T-top. And it's a relatively featureless T-top on this test boat, but you can of course rig this with lights and speakers, or if I climb up and take a look on top, you can rig that with a roof rack so you can carry your SUP boards and your kayaks. Pop your radar up there as well, of course. And as we head further forward, we'll ignore the Helm for now. We find ourselves at that big bow space we saw earlier. Now this is not quite as spacious as the cockpit, and given that it's a tapered section of the boat, you wouldn't expect it to be. But again, we get a C-shaped seating section facing aft this time, and a forward-facing bench, so it remains very, very sociable. Easily fit 4 people up here, and there is the option, as on the 585, for a table in the centre there, just to make the very most of that. More grab rails as well, just to help alleviate any security concerns from this shallow furniture. And what we also have here, as you would expect, is a space inside the Helm console itself. On good strong rams, again we've got a rubberized lining around the edge of this space, and inside there, well, this is great. This is what I was talking about in that aft cockpit. These are the infills for that space. Cushions on top of nice rigid aluminium structures, so you just drop those into the space. Really good solution, that, and the fact that they've got a proper zone for their storage is fantastic. But of course, this is also the space where you can spec a portable toilet and some canvases for a bit of extra privacy, and I suspect a lot of people will go for that particular option just to extend their day on the water and add a bit more comfort for family use. And if you go that way, then you're going to need somewhere to put these, so it's great to see that beneath the deck up here we've got an additional storage space. As I say, a lot of these spaces are lined with this sea deck, and it makes loads of sense. And if I just get the camera down in here, well, this goes way back beneath that helm console. We can't quite see because it's very dark back there, but you'll have to trust me on that. You can hear my voice echoing because it is so cavernous. You can certainly fit all your rigid cushions in there, keep them out of the way until you need them. And it's also big enough for a couple of wakeboards as well, I would have thought. As regards the seating itself, well, just as you can at the aft end of this boat, you could drop those rigid infill cushions into this space, create an all-over sunbed big enough for 4 or 5 people, I would have thought. And up at the business end of things, well, we've got a raised anchor locker here. Here's our windlass, and if we just move this cushion out of the way and open this section, you'll see that we've got the anchor chain within very easy reach here. There it is, a little remote so you can operate the anchor from this spot or further aft at the helm itself. And when you do that, the anchor is actually projected out a little beyond the bow itself, just to protect your boat from impacts. There's some decent storage up here too, particularly beneath this larger forward bench. Good volume in there. Smaller volume spaces under these side benches, as you can see. Certainly no space has been wasted by Aquaspirit. But that said, it would be good to see some speakers up here, maybe some deck lights, maybe a canvas off the leading edge of that T-top, just to shade people when they're dining up here at the bow, and perhaps even a fridge as well, so you don't have to head aft and inconvenience the guests at the back end of the boat when you want to drink. But I have no doubt if you request that kind of thing from the guys at Aquaspirit, it could all be incorporated. The helm of our test boat here today is relatively pared back, more pared back than a boat you would tend to buy, because of course we don't have any MFDs, but there's space here for a pair of 16 inches apparently. It looks like a relatively tight fit, but if there is space, then that's a very impressive thing on a boat of this scale. I also like the fact that the helm console itself, well, it's kind of tapered at the bottom end, so there's plenty of space for your feet. There's no banging your feet on the way past as you make your way forwards and backwards from the bow. But there's a good size of unit on the upper tier here. Not a lot of switch gear. You don't really need a tremendous amount of switch gear. The basics to your left hand side here, your windlass switch here as well. Suzuki display in the centre between the spaces for those MFDs. A right hand throttle and a steering wheel. Now that steering wheel is not currently adjustable, but you can opt for one that is. What I do like though is the fact that these seats are so very comfortable. There's a good space between them, so we've got a couple of cup holders here in the centre, and we also got, as you can see, armrests for both the skipper and the co-pilot, plus a bolster, and all of that comes as standard, so that's very comfortable indeed. No fore and aft travel on those seats, but to be honest, you don't really need it because it's a very comfortable space regardless, particularly with that foot brace down below, which of course is built from aluminium but with a kind of rubberized coating that makes it really grippy. It's very well placed indeed, so the ergonomics here are really pretty strong, I've got to say. But what we really want to do, of course, is have a drive, because this is after all an aluminium boat, therefore relatively light. We've got the mid-range engine, as I say, that Suzuki DF250. So expecting a decent bit of performance out of it. Just activate the throttle, trim her in and get her up and underway. There's not much in the way of elements to combat here today. But as we get up and underway, there is a bit of bow lift, but you can power through that and flatten her straight off, just like that. Ease her back again, and we're planing at around about 15 knots, I'd say. You can increase that to around about 20 knots, and at that kind of space you're actually doing about a litre per nautical mile. 20 knots, 20 litres, so we've got a 300 litre fuel tank, as I mentioned. We save 20% redundancy in the system. That gives you a huge range of around about 240 nautical miles. Now we've pushed on again a little way through the rev range to around about 27 knots. And at that kind of pace, we're doing about 1.4 litres per nautical mile, which reduces the range to around about 170 miles, but even at the very top end of 42 knots, we're only looking at 2 litres per nautical mile. So this is certainly a very sustainable boat to run. In terms of her handling, well, let's get her a little up to speed and turn across these long, slow swells that are coming in. Well, to be honest, I was expecting it to be a slightly noisier boat than it is. Often with aluminium hulls you do get a little bit of slap and reverberation, and you can sometimes hear the water shapes even when you're off the plane, just tickling the point of entry on that hull. But it feels like quite a sturdily built, well put together boat, this. We'll spin around to starboard. We're getting right on up towards the top end here. But she's nice and settled. Have to be careful with these big old swells though. She is after all quite a lightweight boat, as I say, less than 3 metric tons, in spite of the fact that she's a 7-metre rib capable of seating 11 people, and the behaviour from the hull is very good. Quite a deep V we got here, around about 22 degrees at the transom I think, and a relatively fine entry with reverse chines just to give you that extra bit of lateral stability, and it's a very easy boat to drive. We'll just trim her in and swing around to port again. Give her an extra little fistful of grunt. And a little bit of trim. And when you really push her, that water line does disappear aft. She really lifts her skirts and gets up. That's a lot of fun. And if we trim her back in where you can hear and see the waterline creeps way back forward, you sacrifice a little bit of efficiency for a bit more control. But in all honesty, that's exactly what you want here. You want a boat that you can really manipulate properly from the helm and feel safe while you're doing it. And this is exactly that. Well, our brief time with the Aquaspirit 700 is now over. We're back at Queen Anne's Battery, but I have to say the equation for this boat is very straightforward indeed, because this is a really compelling package. As an aluminium boat, it's very tough, very resilient. It's also extremely novice friendly in the way it drives. It's very spacious indeed, particularly in the context of the sector, and it's actually great value for money too. The base package comes in at £89,995 plus VAT, including that Suzuki DF250. And in the context of the modern market, I think that represents really good value for money. Now, whether you agree with that or not, we'd love to hear from you, so please do leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, well, please do subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.